What's the mall down there?
Eastland.
Eastland Mall.
It's nice.
Ooh.
There's a purple suit store left.
Yes.
But just all purple suits.
There's a purple.
Tell me that's not fucking racist. Like, where's the charity for that? Purple suit, Detroit? That's a black joke. That's period, end of story. Like, and these aren't, like, I'm all for some edgy fucking humor, but when all you're doing is constantly railing against black people, against trans people, against people of color, against people from minority groups across the board, when that's where your humor relies on, it's hard to really think that you're doing it in a good faith, just a ribbing. Just a ribbing. Good morning. A little later start today. We are going to go over some madness. So, continuing with our talks of the election, we're probably going to talk a little bit about coronavirus, but I thought we'd start with something special today. So I went ahead and I subscribed to the Blaze TV, and we're going to watch Steven Crowder's live stream, reacting accordingly so that our content is transformative. And we're going to see the bullshit that he espouses in real time, because Steven Crowder doing what Steven Crowder does best, making absurd fucking claims with zero evidence. Case in point, if you go watch his Joe Rogan video where he appeared and he argued vehemently that marijuana is bad, but that he had no good reason to believe that. So with that, we'll also be looking at a Glenn Beck video. In the Glenn Beck video, he brings on Alan Dershowitz and discusses Trump's legal strategy. And we get to see how fucking stupid that is. It basically comes down to just a legal ploy to try and steal an election. There's no other way to describe it. Not if you have any sanity, any mental faculties that have not been corrupted by some of the dumbest pundits in modern media history. So, without further ado, let's pause this music and let's go ahead and turn on Mr. Crowder.
From Twitter because of doxing. That's what they claimed, because it showed some private emails. They gave the name, municipality, and I'm pretty sure on Twitter, the address.
Wow. Good morning, all.
It's like, well, how did they reverse the decision? I don't know. If they're about to send some black bloc protesters with Molotov cocktails to your condominium complex, guess what? I might change my mind too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not worth it. I'm a volunteer.
I think he looks
And
like
their job is to do this. Their job, if there's
fatter
irregularities that they have to sort through
Daniel
first,
Tosh.
you don't certify the vote yet.
Well, here's another thing. They may have had reason for pause because, and we're still confirming this, so you can fact check at Twitter, but it seems that this comes from a legitimate source. There's new proof that the same ballots in Detroit were run 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 4 times the same ballot in Wayne County.
Pause the Detroit Tigers mascot. I just want to make sure I'm following along.
4 erosions of our constitutional republic. Soon we'll all be living in trash can.
I'm from Grosse Pointe, and I feel that just because you put a
So
Oh,
you
I can rewind this
fact check at
shit.
Twitter,
Look at
but
this.
It seems that this comes from a legitimate source. There's new proof that the same ballots in Detroit were run 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so sweet. We can pause this. I don't have to deal with this bullshit without being able to fact check. So let's go ahead and do this. So he's saying that some ballots in Detroit, which Detroit, if you watched our video yesterday or the live stream, Detroit is where the Republicans were completely okay not certifying Detroit, which had a smaller margin of inconsistency in reporting, which is, by the way, as we talked about, happens all the time. It's just a matter of, a few numbers here and there in the reporting, had a smaller one than a bunch of white districts that they were perfectly okay certifying with, Trump support and all that in those districts. So let's ignore the fact that they were going to disenfranchise a fuck ton of both conservative and liberal black votes. And let's talk about whatever the fuck this is. Sorry for the delay on this. In a documentation hellhole, I'll throw you a bone from Wayne County, Michigan. Some ballot counted twice. Same ballot counted 3 times. Same ballot counted 4 times on Dominion Democracy Suite 5.5A. Let's see if I can zoom in on whatever this garbage is. Does that screw it up for you guys? It does. So hold on one second. Let's see. Ballot. So it's giving ballot ID, voter ID. whether it's rejected, the ballot number, date sent, date returned. Okay, cool. So let's see, first of all, because it's important, let's see who this person is. This person is ZenXV on Twitter. Saren Eaglesfield, a radical anti-centrist, data scientist, chickens, tortoise. Okay. Data scientist, so this is from the Epoch Times, which I believe is a conservative publication. The data scientist Sarah Eaglesfield says she discovered nearly 60 counties across the U.S. that had ballots removed from the total count after they've been counted, indicating Dominion voting systems is flawed. Now, we talk about this all the time, but to what degree of problem are we talking about here? That is always the issue. It's not whether or not someone tries to vote fraudulently, as we will point to multiple times. 2 cases of voter fraud in Pennsylvania. Both Republicans, one voting for a dead person, one voting for a young child. Was that enough to sway the significant lead Donald Trump or that Joe Biden had in Pennsylvania? No, not at all. Not at all. Also, it's funny that they were conservative voters that fraudulently voted. So let's go ahead and we'll continue with this, but we're going to take this down as a claim. So we can get through all of this madness. Let's take it down. So I've got this article, or I've got this tweet to this article from Epoch Times where this person is saying that. So the claim, of course, is that ballots counted multiple times. Now, this is not a cop-out. This is the reality of the situation. When something comes up like this, our question isn't, was there fraud? Because we have found that there are instances, though rare, and that's the key point. So if there was fraud, it's, was there fraud enough to do damage? Because we're detecting fraud. We're detecting fraudulent attempts. Let's stop pretending that it is rampant, as they will say.
4 times the same ballot in Wayne County.
Wow. Pause the Detroit Tigers mascot. I just want to make sure I'm following along.
4 erosions of our constitutional republic. Soon we'll all be living in trash can.
I'm from Grosse Pointe, and, I feel that just because we put a giant wall between our city and Detroit does not make us racist.
No. Plus, you guys aren't any better off because in Detroit they've run out of people to kill.
Exactly. We have to
God,
go over that and give them
the
something to
fucking
do.
language they use when talking about Detroit is like beyond dog whistle at times.
All the time.
I'm not kidding. Twice in my front yard.
I can't figure it out. Funkmaster Flex doesn't even
right
live
before
there.
we got on.
Somehow, I don't know.
No,
They must be. There's just people are going to Grosse. It's a good place to purchase cars legally. Oh. People don't realize this. Detroit invented the carjacking. You know, when my father taught me to drive, because he learned to drive in Detroit, he had to teach me how to avoid carjacking. He said, "Here's what happens: you always leave some space between you, at least a full car's length between you and the bumper in front of you.
It's always like,
stopped at a light, and you
what are they talking about? Are they talking about the actual issue of crime in Detroit? Are they talking about it being due to poverty, due to the loss of a lot of auto working jobs, auto manufacturing jobs?
Carjack you. That way, if someone ran you, you say, "Bye, bitches," and you go off.
Yeah, it's right after you learn to parallel park, actually.
That's the question you actually have to ask. And I get that it's unpopular
watch
to.
out for the deer roaming down.
I get that it's unpopular when you're on the right to hear the idea that someone that you watch is being racist, but at the same time, you can't ignore it, especially in situations like this. You have to ask the question because they're prone to say some pretty racist shit.
Over 5,000 votes that they just found, and we just gave you some pretty strong evidence that they've counted ballots 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
I did not.
By the
whose
way,
username?
Coincides. It corroborates the affidavits, which are sworn testimony, effectively under oath, of people saying, "I just saw them put in the ballot in a bunch of times." People writing down the affidavits thought, like, "Oh, you must be misspeaking." No one would be that blatant with their criminal activity. No, I saw them just put it in and run the ballot a bunch of times, like it was a cartoon with his tongue falling out because a pretty bunny lady came by.
She's so
no
pretty.
evidence whatsoever.
Let's point to let's see, ballots in parking lot van. I'm trying to remember what this was. Parking lot van voter fraud. There's a video or a picture of a bunch of ballots sitting outside and there's like a Biden Harris van or something like that, and I better get the mug for subbing to this shit. I'm sure that since it's only $9.99 a month, yeah. Let's see. Oh, cool. We'll have another article to go over. We might have to do 2 streams today. We're gonna go one over just this shit in real time and watch it, and then we'll go over all these different articles about voter fraud. This is not a fraud case. Keep an eye on what President Trump's lawyers say about supposed voter fraud in court, where lying under oath is a crime. Yeah, but there's a case. I would really like it. So if someone can find it, please help out. I want to find the van one. Trump ballots being filled out in parking lot. Let's see if that has it. Voter fraud. Now, if this actually happened and was an issue, unless, of course, you think the deep state and the media are working together, this would come up way more easily. But I don't think it is because it wasn't an issue. Pardon me, Taco. For we are saving democracy. There it is. I have clicked this before. Okay, so here's this, and then let's see if I can find the fact check for it. So let me pull the article up for you guys. And then let's go to here. Okay. Let me hide you, Mr. Crowder. So this is the article. So let's just skim it real quick, okay? Oh my God, so many fucking things. Let's see. A second sworn affidavit from a whistleblower who was an election worker in Clark County, Nevada, claims mail-in ballots were improperly filled out in a Biden-Harris van outside a polling place. A redacted copy of the affidavit signed on November 8th and obtained by the Washington Examiner puts weight behind some of the claims first detailed by American Conservative Union President Matt Schlapp, who is helping lead the charge for the president's legal efforts in Nevada. In a Sunday press conference, Schlapp said an election worker saw a van marked Biden-Harris with open ballots inside. The whistleblower, who worked as a poll worker from October 17th to 30th, complained about a Biden-Harris bus or van that was often stationed outside the polling place that would often have speakers, dancers, music, and other festivities going on, and whose organizers had to be told several times a day to stay 100 feet from the polling location. He also said that voters without proper identification were permitted to cast provisional ballots. The biggest shock claim, though, dealt with improperly filled out ballots in the van belonging to supporters of presumptive president-elect Joe Biden, whom he saw while on a lunch break walk on October 28th or 29th. I personally witnessed 2 people handing multiple unopened mail-in ballot envelopes to other people who then opened and filled out the ballots against the side of the Biden-Harris van, the affidavit said. The same 2 people who marked the ballots then put the marked ballots in official pink and white envelopes. These people were not poll workers. The affidavit continued. By my final walking lap, there were 5 or 6 additional people who formed a human wall, which moved as I walked by, apparently in an attempt to block my view of the 4 people who were opening envelopes, marking ballots, and placing those ballots in the pink, white turn envelopes. So this is the affidavit. This is from November 9th, I believe. Yeah, November 9th. So this was right after it happened. So the problem here is that this has been refuted. But let's forget facts for a second. Let's talk about the accusation. The idea that they sat in a parking lot where they had been identified, told multiple times you need to be a little further away, whatever the case, that they sat there and just decided that a human wall to move, nothing to see here, nothing to see here, that was going to be their plan to steal the election from Donald Trump for Joe Biden. It's a little absurd. It's a little crazy. But let's go ahead and let's try to find real quick. Let's try to find the, let's see, Nevada whistleblower fact check. Here we go. PolitiFact. Let's check out what this has to say. Matt Schlapp stated on November 8th, 2020 in a Fox News appearance, as an example of voter fraud, we have literally 9,000 people who voted in this election in Nevada who don't live in Nevada. Matt Schlapp baseless claim that 9,000 Nevada mail-in ballots are illegitimate. Is this not about the... There is no evidence to support Matt Schlapp's claim that 9,000 people cast improper ballots in Nevada after moving out of state. Schlapp's claim draws on a Republican list. Okay, so this is about a completely different claim. Is there anything about the van on this one? No, there isn't. Okay. If anyone can find that, we'll go over it again. I got my source from NPR, and I trust NPR way more than I do the Washington Examiner. But this is a fact-checking moment. God damn it, we need the facts. So if anyone can find that and post it in chat, that would be great. Links are allowed. Safe for work links. News-related preferred. I'll just continue with Steven Crowder in the meantime while we try to hunt for that.
Anyway, we're going to be continuing with voter fraud in the vaccine. But please, hey, we are now on Parler. For people who don't know, Parler, we're still on Facebook, Twitter, and all, but Parler is a pretty good app right now. It's a place where free speech actually still exists. Yeah. We will always
especially
fight
if you're
in
white
the territories
supremacist.
where we can. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Until it gets to a point if they just completely throttle your voice. And I'm not saying that's happened with any of the platforms yet, but it's getting pretty close. So Parler, thank you. We're at Steven Crowder on Parler. And, of course, to consider joining Mug Club, louderwithcrowder.com/Mug Club. We still have the Crowder election stream promo code. That's $30 off because the election is not called, despite what Stelter tells you, because he doesn't want to pay nuisance money. And there's no free content without you subscribing on Mug Club. So we really do appreciate it.
Is this free?
Like,
I mean, they might release it afterwards,
selling,
but I had to subscribe
little
to
vibrating
see this
toothbrushes
stream. So
and bed sheets and gold, and Tom Selleck hasn't taken my house. That's because you guys join up. We're not funded by a foreign caliphate. It's you and Mugs, and we'll have another 30 minutes exclusive on Mug Club. Hold on, what are they saying at Cena? Oh, they're talking about the vaccine. By the way, the new virtue signal is the asshole haircut.
Oh, is it?
That's Sanjay Gupta because he wants you to know I can't go get my hair cut because I'm social distancing, and so that's how he looks.
every time they mock someone for adhering to some social distancing really grinds my fucking gears. Really does. Like, what an asshole. Okay? But that said, Sanjay could be in the studio or at home. I've seen home studios that look just as, professional as that. But I'm curious if, because I haven't had a haircut. Like, my hair without the headphones, it flops over my ears. Yeah, I'm sorry for not, risking my health and safety just so I can look a little better at home.
Wow, it just looks greasy.
Yes.
Yeah. What was the excuse before COVID?
It's like he's on break on the set of The Outsiders at the craft table. Only he lost his comb and switchblade.
His switch comb.
These jokes are only funny to assholes who like to make fun of people for no reason. That's all it is. Like, I'm waiting for a really good joke.
We all had one as a kid.
I did too.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So cool.
Hey.
Ooh.
like, well,
And then they stab you.
Yeah. Take your comb.
you can still sharp election that's stolen. We'll move Fraud Week over. We will make sure that in the future, if there is no fraudulent election that's stolen, we'll move Fraud Week over to make room for a Beautiful Brave Trans Awareness Week. But this is about visibility for trans people, and so we are going to simultaneously celebrate Trans Awareness Week with Fraud Week. Trans awareness, thank you for everything that you do.
Fuck. What a fucking piece of shit. Where's the fucking... What a lowbrow, dumb fuck, cunt, shit piece. Fuck you. God damn it. All that was is transphobic. The end. End of story. Like, can you imagine that same piece, but just about gay people on like a Pride Month, some random day in Pride Month? Can you imagine that piece? Not that he hasn't had a moment of just completely not giving a shit about the sexuality of others, especially with his gay wonk fucking tirades. Wow. Like, that was just the most ham-fisted, insensitive, bigoted fucking thing. And I'm not surprised.
Well, we see you.
I am harder than astrophysics.
Hope everyone in this studio enjoys my droplets.
That's true. No, you didn't aerosol.
Don't worry, it's not aerosol. Aerosol is a finer mist. By the way, your single-ply cotton mask at home, unless washed in an industrial hospital washing machine, does nothing. According to science, someone send me that paper. Fauci, I'm eyeing you, and I know you love the limelight. We have an open seat and a booster seat right here for you.
I hope that moisture doesn't loosen
lowbrow
my
humor.
duct tape.
What?
I have no idea.
Duct taped.
Oh,
The awareness of...
Taping it back.
I still don't get it.
I'll give it to you.
Oh, boy. Took a turn.
All right, but we are going to continue. We're going to be talking about the vaccines, and we are going to be talking about Operation Warp Speed. But, of course, we are trying to provide you with a service right now going state by state of the no evidence, so it's time to continue Fraud Week.
Cool. Now we can talk about something that, we can debunk. Right before he gets on, he makes some comment about, before we started up the stream, he made some comment about how Joe Biden, were he president, he could not get a vaccine as fast as he did. Let's remember that Pfizer, the only government money they received were pre-purchase. They weren't part of Operation Warp Speed. There is a huge financial incentive for every major pharmaceutical company out there to get their asses in gear and create a vaccine. There is already incentive. There is already, these people have money in the bank for this kind of research, for this kind of work. And to be one of the first ones to get out there and do it, hell yeah. There is no reason that Pfizer would not have come to this moment had Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, George W., H.W., if we had a presidentless nation, the vaccine still would have come to fruition because there's a reason for it to do so. And Pfizer being the first one to get their vaccine to the stage that it's ready, would have happened anyway. But alas, let's pretend that it was Donald Trump's really awesome, on-point leadership that brought us here. Here, it's gonna go up. It's gonna do it. So clever, so clever. I bet they originated this, didn't they?
Just got
I bet
it everywhere.
they might have.
I don't think it hit the camera, but it might have.
Did it actually hit the camera?
I don't know. I'm trying to see.
Is there anything? Are there droplets on the stream? Can you guys see me?
That was a good spit take.
It was
though,
a good
right?
spit
That's
take.
It was, yeah.
the price you pay.
You know when you're a kid and you first see a spit take, and then you're looking for any excuse to do the big?
Exactly.
You're just like, hey, give me some water.
And just like a child, he chose a
Well,
really
you're
not funny way to do it.
Yeah,
Comedy.
the
Yeah,
context.
you do it with your chocolate milk and your mom beats you half to death.
Right.
Yeah, good
Remember
times.
that?
Personal experience, is that what's going on here?
Indeed it is.
Well,
So
in Detroit.
specific.
That's when you were going down to the Grosse Pointe Mall. What was it? What's the mall down there?
Eastland.
Eastland
there's-
Mall.
It's nice.
Ooh.
There's a purple suit store left.
Yes.
But just all purple.
There's a purple.
Tell me that's not fucking racist. Like, where's the charity for that? Purple suit, Detroit. That's a black joke. That's period, end of story. Like, and these aren't like, I'm all for some edgy fucking humor, but when all you're doing is constantly railing against black people, against trans people, against people of color, against people from minority groups across the board, when that's where your humor relies on, it's hard to really think that you're doing it in a good faith, just a ribbing, just a ribbing.
Store, and it's
Zoots.
right next to the Polymer playground where kids
Yeah.
play in a giant piece of French toast, but they're actually just midgets selling heroin.
Yeah, it is.
Canes
Black-
are 2 for $1 on Fridays, by the way.
We're going in the and black tar. Which, by the way, I know people are saying, "Hey, there's an empty holster here." I don't know what happened to my gun. I think I gave it to a kid. So we're continuing Fraud Week.
He didn't. He did not.
This week, Nevada and Pennsylvania. We're cataloging this on CrowderBits so that you can have this as a reference point. And I want to get through the facts first so that I don't get anything wrong. And then, of course, we'll go to some commentary. So let's go to Nevada first. This week, the Clark County Commission, right, they threw out a local election. You can bring this up there, Tokenawan, because there were, quote, too many discrepancies to be sure of the election results. And there were 153,000 votes. And
Let's
this week, the Clark County Commission, right, they threw out a local election. You can bring this up there, Tokenawan.
Trump hails big victory in Nevada after county board tosses local election results. President Trump on Monday celebrated what he called a big victory in Nevada after Clark County commissioners declined to certify the election results for a county commission race. Though the decision does not directly impact the presidential election results, which commissioners certified. I'm sorry, wait. Let's read that again. President Trump on Monday celebrated what he called a big victory in Nevada after Clark County commissioners declined to certify the election results for a county commission race. Though the decision does not directly impact the presidential election results, which commissioners certified. District C voters split 76,586 for Democrat Ross Miller and 76,576 for Republican Stavros Anthony. KLS TV reports. Registrar of Voters Joe Gloria told commissioners, "We have found discrepancies that we can't explain that would cast a doubt on whether or not that margin of victory is solid." As we've said before, when there is a recount or there's a reason to investigate, when there's a recount, it only shifts votes by a few hundred. That's it. So this is an area where absolutely I could see someone looking at this and saying, hey, that's close. That's 10 fucking votes. There's a reason to hold off and to verify these results. I see complete reason, regardless. In fact, it is in favor of the Democrat, but I'd say if that was in favor of the Republican, I'd say the same thing. That's a very, very small margin. But I'm not understanding why it's being hailed by Trump as a big victory, because it doesn't sound like they tossed local election results. Let's hear what else he has to say.
Because there were, quote, too many discrepancies to be sure of the election results, and there were 153,000 votes in this municipality. So they had to toss it. That's a local election, and I don't necessarily, there's anyone, we don't think it's going to affect the national election, but that's still kind of like if you have to toss an election, you have to toss 153,000 votes because you can't even get close to matching up the totals. Maybe there are a few memory cards under someone's mattress next to their gold and reverse mortgage. A few memory cards under someone's. So they had to toss it. That's a local election, and I don't. Election. You can bring this up there, Tokenawan, because there were, quote, too many discrepancies to be sure of the election results, and there were 153,000 votes in this municipality. So they had to toss it. That's a local election, and I don't necessarily, there's anyone, we don't think it's going to affect the national election, but that's still kind of like if you have to toss an election, you have to toss 153,000 votes because you can't even get.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anything about 153,000 votes tossed Clark County. Would it, like, oh my God, am I gonna have to pay Washington Post or New York Times? Hold on, I'm not paying for that, another news thing. New York Times, Nevada. Okay, let's go over this article real quick. President Trump claimed a big victory on Monday night after officials in Clark County, Nevada, voted to rerun one local race that had a margin of just 10 votes. Do you see the difference right off the bat between Steven Crowder's framing and what's actually happening? They're not tossing out the votes. They're rerunning the election because it was so close. We're seeing that happen in Georgia. We're seeing 2 senators have a runoff election because it was too close. We don't need to read the rest of the fucking article. Let's continue.
Close to matching up the totals. Maybe there are a few memory cards under someone's mattress next to their gold and reverse mortgage contract. I have no idea, but go looking for them. You'll find them. Where's the memory card? Maybe it's wearing stripes in a candy cane forest like Waldo.
yeah.
Why does Waldo always hide in places with stripes? Waldo, we could find you easily anywhere else. Well, I don't know. I'm at the candy cane amusement park. Well,
It
there's
wouldn't
your
be a
problem,
fun game.
Waldo.
Well, maybe
It
he
wouldn't be
doesn't
a.
want
All
to
right,
be
Taco.
found.
I will hold you. I will hold you.
Found.
Bill Devane found 5,000 votes.
So this was 153,000 votes in a local election that were tossed. And by the way, this does translate. These direct votes are a local election, not national, but this does translate to the shenanigans that you see at the national level. Matt Schlapp summarized the problems going into the Nevada.
There are no shenanigans. He's framing this. I'm sorry. I keep looking this way. You guys are there, but I keep looking this way because I'm looking at chat when I talk. It's weird. Try to focus on the camera. There's no shenanigans. It was a close election. Period. End of story. The end. There aren't even claims of irregularities in this moment. It's like this is too close to fucking call. The end.
Elections highlighting that there were all kinds of irregularities, even at a national level. In Clark County, here he is because you won't believe me.
In all my years in politics, I have never seen the types of voter irregularity we have seen in Clark County.
Is this Mr.
The
Schlapp?
zeal to push reckless, unsolicited mail-in voting
This guy's
resulted
a
in
prick.
50% of ballots coming through the mail and a tenfold increase in mail ballots in Clark County.
It's a little weird. And I think he might go into something right now about how most of those ballots were for Joe Biden. I wonder why. It might have something to do with the fact that, I don't know, Donald Trump told his people not to vote by mail. And it might have to do with the fact that we're in a pandemic. So that's why a lot of people did vote by mail. I don't know. Who am I? I'm nobody. I'm just a Twitch streamer. Twitch streamer just talking about politics. These guys know more, right?
Fact. The voter lists were
This is an
never
actual fact, by the
appropriately
way.
scrubbed, including the press reports after FOIA requests of not scrubbing over 80,000 primary voters before the general election ballots were made.
No evidence.
Fact. Illegal ballots never should have been mailed, and they never
Okay, so two things. One, being on the voter list is not voter fraud. Like, so this unscrubbed list isn't some damning piece of evidence. Two, what he's talking about right here.
should have ended up in the final tally.
The illegal ballots sent out. How many times do we have to see multiple articles showing that ballots attempted to be mailed in that weren't being mailed in for whatever reason, are getting caught? People are getting in trouble for doing it. And just the fact that what he's talking about, ballots being sent out, those ballots don't matter. There are plenty of states, I think Nevada's one of them, that just sends the ballots out. In fact, let's go ahead and fact check that one real quick. Does Nevada send ballots to everyone? To everyone. Nevada approves plan to mail ballots to all registered voters. Yes, here, let me go ahead and show you that so you don't think I'm just saying it. Yes, see? Look at that. So the framing of this is dishonest, disingenuous bullshit.
Tomato, tomato.
How did this happen? This happened with a reckless change in Nevada election rules right before the general election.
The reckless change, by the way, is not that safeguards are in place. Other states have methods that we can, one state could learn and study from, as if mail-in voting hasn't been going on to some degree in most states. The implication that this is just some rampant attempt to steal the election is...
which reduced the democratic norms of meaningful observation by the media and by Americans.
Says you.
The reduction of ballot security and almost the elimination of signature verification.
What's the elimination of ballot security? Is he saying not enough people looked at the signatures? I'm really not understanding the claim.
Yeah, I know you feel for there.
Their audio guy.
Their
yeah,
audio
yeah.
guy.
And he actually ended the speech by saying, "You just got Matt slapped."
You just got slapped. You just got slapped. And by the way, you usually don't see someone that tan with hair that white, that thick. He's like a walking photo negative. So
Kind
here's
of a good
some
joke.
other fast facts for you. Dominion voting, the systems that we've talked about, they were used in 16 out of 17 jurisdictions in Nevada.
So there's a New York Times article about about voter fraud. Give me 1 second. So it's in the same one. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. It's the PolitiFact, not New York Times. Sorry. The PolitiFact article. Let's go ahead and look at that real quick. Says Dominion voting system. Facebook post stated on November 11th, 2020 in a Facebook post. Says Dominion voting system flip votes to Joe Biden in states where Trump is bringing legal challenges. No evidence Dominion voting systems caused widespread tabulation errors that flip votes for Biden. If your time is short, there is no credible evidence that the voting system affected any vote tallies. Dominion voting systems was only used in a few counties that experienced minor problems that were quickly resolved and were either the result of human error or temporary malfunctions. These claims are a misunderstanding of how election administration works, experts said. The process involves several protocols and rigorous testing that would make it exceedingly difficult for mass fraud to happen at this level undetected. Again, deep staters need not continue further thought.
With, of course, a history of glitches. We don't have them in this election because no one's really looking for them. But in previous elections, a whistleblower, by the way, with the Clark County Elections Department claimed that poll workers fabricated proof of residence, right, for data for illegal voters. This is under a sworn affidavit. Again, we're just doing Nevada.
Poll workers fabricated proof of residence. The thing is that these come out. Why don't I have a more updated article? Is the deep state really protecting this man? I don't know. It's weird. I'm not finding any additional information on this.
Right now, we're going to get to Pennsylvania. We're cooking with gas. We're cooking with the slow downfall and erosion of our democracy.
Yeah.
It's renewable, apparently. every 4 years and midterms.
High smoke point.
And recounts. Yeah, it's like palm oil. Somewhere there's a paleo or keto person like, I get that. I need to get my saturated fats in because I believe it's in envelopes. And here's...
Sorry, I had to skip past his next attempt at a joke. Let's see what we got here. Witness say Biden-Harris van unloading. Here it is. Okay, so he brings it up. Ballots at Nevada County Center. Trump campaign says. The witness says he went for a walk on his lunch break, rounding, blah, blah, blah. We already covered that.
People formed a human shield to prevent poll watchers from observing. So we'll continue with this because there's some... And beware the fact checkers. We're going to get into some of the fact checks that you see that aren't really... They fact check themselves.
Oh, okay,
but when they
cool.
say, well, it was a mistake, they formed a human shield to block poll workers.
This is the account of a biased political actor. Not actor as in he was hired. Political actor as in someone who's actively involved in the political sphere.
We used to form a human shield so, black people could saunter on up to the bar and eat a piece of pie at the diner. Maybe not be bothered by German shepherds while they enjoy a brunch. Now we're forming shields to prevent the preservation of our constitutional republic.
Which is better than making a shield out of your parents' trash cans so you can go be Antifa and burn down the city.
That's true. That is true.
And if they don't even use metal trash cans.
No, it's plastic.
Is this a recycling bin? This won't even stop my switchblade comb.
It says keep Philly clean on the side. What is this?
It's part of the message.
Well, we don't all have time for professional shields. We can't all have plate carriers. Well, listen, when the revolution comes, I'm just saying, plate carriers, not a bad idea. Thanks, Spartan Armor. Then in Nevada, the Republican Party, of course, said they found over 3,000 specific instances of ballots that appear to be cast improperly. Up to 10,000 ballots have allegedly been cast by people who don't appear to live in the state at all.
All right. Let's see. Ballots cast by out-of-state residents in Nevada. Oh, is this it? Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Nevada election results, the 3,000 challenged votes. Trump campaign objects to some ballots. States officials and military families say many service members voted legally after being transferred. Oh, okay. Oh, come on. Wall Street Journal. Okay, well, we get enough of the article for me to read this. Las Vegas. When Trump campaign attorneys released a list of 3,000 people who they said voted in Nevada after moving to another state, they said it was evidence of voter fraud in a closely contested battleground state. Military families and Nevada election officials point to something else. Service members who have legally voted in Nevada after being transferred elsewhere. I'm sure they'll fact check us on the fact checking.
These have been referred, by the way, to Attorney General Bill Barr, who is on my.
For those who don't know, when you're in the military, when you move out of state, you can almost, to my knowledge, you can always vote remote. I think that option is available in every state for you as a military person to be able to cast an absentee ballot, or in some cases now with the new COVID thing, just a mail-in ballot.
List of it's not gay.
Yeah, this is.
I'm sorry, he made a homophobic slur just now or joke. I think I missed it.
Hello, Bill Barr. That's what I mean. Oh. I guess it's just me. Listen, you know what?
Yeah.
I went out on a limb expecting support.
No, you got none.
Yeah, well.
Well, you left us there. We didn't know where you were going with that.
I didn't know if you meant gay bar.
Manner of speaking.
2 R's.
By the way,
Well, I
don't know if he would be there. I'd have to lure him.
If you're going to bring in illegal ballots, can you not use the Biden-Harris van to do it?
Right.
Can you get some, like,
Okay, so he's joking about what we talked about earlier. What fucking political mastermind in their right mind would be this fucking stupid? I guarantee you it wouldn't be from the Biden-Harris campaign.
unmarked van?
Rudy Giuliani makes me not able to say any campaign.
It's like a pedophile. It's like, no, the whole point is to have a paneled van so we can't see in, but you wrote rapist on it.
Yeah. Use like a Trump van or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you have that glass box porn truck, but it's a one-way mirror.
Like a Steven, that would be in a Steven Seagal film where he's a spy, but he rides up in a van. He's like, my van says secret spy. I don't know.
I don't.
These aren't stories. There's no real way to know how many times that's happened. I don't know if they do it by just adding up that suit. Now we have evidence that there have been at least several ballots counted 3-4 times. And the truth is, with the recounts,
we need to look into that evidence. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop Mr. Crowder here. I'll watch this later. We'll go over it in excruciatingly uncomfortable detail maybe tomorrow. Well, let's go ahead and dive into two things that I really want to go into. One is what he's pointing to right now. We're going to read the Epoch Times, which is apparently, as I'm getting more information, a far-right newspaper. Now, I'm happy just saying right-leaning. We don't need to, like, exacerbate it. They could be far-right. I don't know. But let's go ahead and dip out on Mr. Crowder. Sorry, buddy. Be quiet. And let's go ahead and look at this. Let's look at this article. Oh, for free during the election. Oh, I forgot the Epoch Times is a newspaper you have to pay for. So I guess we're not going to do him. I guess we're going to go ahead and do Mr. Beck. Mr. Beck and Alan Dershowitz having a real interesting conversation.
Us now. Mr. Alan Dershowitz joins us now. He is Professor Emeritus of Harvard Law School and host of The Dersh Show, wherever you get your podcast. Alan Dershowitz, welcome.
Okay, we're going to take a real quick break. When I come back, we're going to go over this video. So if you're new, please hit that follow button. If you want to continue watching, please just stick around. I'll only be gone for like 2 minutes. I just have to run upstairs. And then we're going to go over this video where Alan Dershowitz sets the stage for how Trump is trying to steal the election. And I don't mean steal it in the hyperbolic sense. And he's just exercising his rights as someone who was fighting in this election for votes and then feels it was wrongfully taken from him and he's seeking all legal nonviolent avenues. No, this is him setting the stage for a big old crock of shit. We'll be right back. Have no fear. Lycan has returned. Okay. So let's go over this Glenn Beck shit. God.
Oh, thank you so much, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
Let me know if the levels are good.
Tell me what your thoughts are on the election and how it's being handled right now.
Well, there are two kinds of lawsuits. There are the wholesale and the retail. The wholesale is...
First of all, the question, what is your stance on the election and how it's being handled right now? The election went great. It was amazing. That's why Donald Trump has problems with it, because it went well and he still lost.
Is reflected in the Pennsylvania case, where you have a legal challenge, a crystal clear legal challenge. The legislature said that ballots that are submitted before Election Day have to be received before the end of Election Day. The courts said no, there are 3 extra days. The Constitution says only the legislature can make those decisions, not the courts. So that's a...
Okay, so what he's saying, what Dershowitz is saying, is that in Pennsylvania, our Constitution, I believe he's talking about the American Constitution, unless he's talking about the Pennsylvania Constitution. Either way, the Constitution he's referring to is saying that the legislature, the legislative branch, is what ought to determine, or is what does determine the rules of the election. The court came in. The law does say, I'm sorry, the legislator has said, you will count votes that arrive by the end of Election Day. The courts came in and said, we're going to give till 3 days after, as long as your stuff is postmarked by Election Day. That is, to me, in my completely non-legal point of view, a very fair assessment for the courts to make. The courts do get to interpret the law. So what the courts could have meant in doing this is that, well, we are under special circumstances, and the point of this law is to make sure that, hey, votes are counted by Election Day, but because we have an unprecedented circumstance where votes are going to have to be cast differently, we're going to give them 3 days. That's completely reasonable for a legislature to do. The spirit of the law, as it will say it. So what Dershowitz is saying is that because of that, Trump has a legal avenue to contest any votes that came in after this. However, I would like to point something out to you guys. Let me find it, because I have it right here, ready to go. So Dershowitz is saying that the courts could turn around and throw that out. But let's ask the question. There are 2 questions to ask. The first is, what is the difference in the ballots? Let's check that out, right? So the difference in the ballots, in the count, we are looking at what, 140 something thousand. I'm sorry, close to 140,000 ballot difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? Okay, cool. So if there are like 120,000 votes or so that were cast by mail, I think we have a reason to be a little suspect, right? Maybe that those ballots were invalid. So let's now ask ourselves the question: how many ballots were received after Election Day? Let's check that. Make sure that Dersh is giving Glenn Beck proper hope. Whoa, wait, what's that? PA received 10,000 ballots after polls closed on election day. Only 10,000? Fuck! That means that if things are reversed in the favor of Donald Trump, it still won't do anything. Except sow dissent, make people fucking think that there's something wrong with our elections. But hey, there's nothing wrong with that. So what's the point? What's the point? There are 10,000 ballots. Like, that's not going to prove voter fraud. That's going to just legislative issue, right? Because people were encouraging folks to drop off those ballots rather than mail them. People were telling people to get their ballots in early so they can know if something was wrong. People were educating folks on how to fill them out so that the first time mail-in voter issue didn't affect people. It's weird how when you promote democracy, my issue with this entire video is going to be this. It's the fact that this whole thing relies not on legislative or judicial action to fix wrongdoing. All this effort relies on is sowing distrust in the process and finding some legal loophole to undermine the election. Because what they're going to talk about here is that Donald Trump doesn't have to find 270. Donald Trump has to get Joe Biden down to 269 or lower, and then the Republican states can go out and send their electors, and in those cases, they may very well win, completely disenfranchising large portions of their states. But let's continue.
Clean, clear, wholesale constitutional issue that the Supreme Court could resolve in a week. The case has already been filed in the Supreme Court. It just has to be refiled. And I think this Supreme Court would probably rule in favor of President Trump on that issue.
So wait. How would somebody rule against? The Constitution is clear. It's the legislature. And didn't the Supreme Court already rule in another case that the legislature had to do it and not the state officials?
Yeah, in Bush versus Gore, they kind of suggested that. And there was a 4-4 vote previously on the Pennsylvania case, and Justice Alito demanded that the votes that came in late after the close of Election Day had to be segregated, strongly implying that the court would rule in that direction. Look, there is a legal argument on the other side.
10,000 votes, by the way, compared to a lead of 140,000.
The legal argument would go something like this. Of course, the Constitution says the legislature has to do it, but traditionally courts interpret legislation. The answer to that is this wasn't really an interpretation. This was an expansion in light of COVID, and probably the court would rule that that expansion would have to come from the legislative, not the judicial branch. But
that sounds like a reasonable legal argument. It does. But when you and I, the citizenry, are evaluating these decisions, we have to look at it as what is happening here. By the court expanding that, are they overstepping their bounds, or are they enabling democracy? Trump is saying they overstepped their bounds, but it's weird that from Trump's end, it seeks to disenfranchise voters, not to enable more voters. And that's what this whole argument is about. From state to state, it's all about counting the votes we want, discounting the votes we don't.
The question is, does that get him enough votes? Right now, it seems like he may be as much as 60,000 votes behind. So the number of disputed ballots under this particular law has to exceed 60,000 before it could turn around the election. Now, if you combine that wholesale attack with some retail attacks, by retail I mean, a few fraudulent ballots here and there, dead people voting, people who moved out of the state voting, you could conceivably get to a point where the Pennsylvania vote would go the other way. Now, you'd need more than that, because the goal of the Trump legal team is not to give Trump 270 votes. That's out of the question.
Here's what we were talking about.
The goal is to keep Biden from getting 270 so that the election is thrown into the House of Representatives. The way to stop Biden from getting 270, according to the legal team, would be to have challenges in enough states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, maybe Arizona, Nevada, to bring him from 305 to 268, 267. If he doesn't get 270, it goes to the House, and the House votes by delegation. That is, each state gets one vote, and there are now more Republican delegations than there are Democratic delegations. So that's the theory. I'm not saying I'm advocating it. I'm not saying I think it will win. I'm just telling you that's the only route to victory at this point that I can see.
So up to this point, I don't hate Dershowitz for his rhetoric because he seems to be just talking matter-of-factly. He's like, this is the way that the legislation was passed. This is the court's ruling on the legislation. This is what is being contested by Trump, and that's the court's ruling of 3 days after with regards to the legislation. And then right here, he's like, look, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying this is what's possible.
Wow. So Alan, you're saying that the Trump
Hear that
legal
hope?
team
Wow.
says that their theory is they cannot get to 270 electoral votes?
I'm just speculating. I don't see how they could get affirmatively to 270, but they don't need it. All they need is to stop Biden from getting 270. That's the key. That's what happened in 1824 in the Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams matter. It's what happened essentially when we had the Tilden Hayes dispute. There are three instances in the
Now let's see what if we can find it real quick. 1824 election dispute. Andrew Jackson election of 1824. It was held from Tuesday, October 26th to Wednesday, December 1st. Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, and William Crawford were the primary contenders. Let's see if I can find something about this was contested because 1825 contingent election, as no presidential candidate had won an absolute electoral vote majority. The responsibility for electing a new president devolved upon the U.S. House of Representatives, which held contingent election on February 5th, 1825. Okay, cool. So this happened because no one got the electoral vote majority through a fair and trusted election. No one, from what I'm seeing here, no one was contesting the results and therefore was able to deprive an opponent of results. I'm not seeing anything about that. I could be wrong. We're just skimming it now. But it seems the case that it was just four candidates running against each other took up a lot of votes. Jackson had 41% of the popular vote, Adams 30, Clay 12, and Crawford 10. And then if you look at the electoral votes, Jackson had 37, Adams had 32, Crawford 15, Clay 14 percentage-wise. That's why the election had to go to this system. It wasn't because one of them fought for every loophole to disenfranchise voters in order for them to be able to take away the majority from the other candidates.
The 19th century where something like this happened. And then, of course, if you follow through the Jackson-Adams 1824, what happens? Jackson loses that, even though he won the popular and the electoral vote. And then for the next 4 years, he campaigned against, quote, the corrupt bargain, and he wins in 1828 and serves for 8 years.
All right, guys, I'm in my super sick car, and I'm at my super sick mansion, and then, oh,
I bet that would have been a funny ad.
So
but
let me go over this again with you. So
let me. Oh, you're talking sweet to me, Mr. Dersh. Oh, you talking sweet to me, sir, and I am enjoying these delicious words you was serving up. Colonel Sanders here is mighty obliged to give you pleasure, sir, for you are offering me this bountiful conservative sweetness.
He just needs to bring Biden down to 269 even.
Right.
And then it
He
goes
said it.
to the House. And the House, they use delegations. It's not just a straight vote. So how is that?
That's right.
How is that selected? What does that mean?
Every delegation, say, take Georgia, it may have, I don't know, 18, 12, 13, whatever members of Congress. If there are more Republican members of Congress from Georgia than Democrats, then the state gets to cast its vote for the Republican candidate. And the vote all it needs is 51 states. So if you win 51-49 in the House of Representatives, then, or in that case, it would be in the House of Representatives, no, you'd have 50 states. So you'd have to win.
From the sound of this, I just imagine like Dershowitz walking down the street, going to get a coffee or something. It sounds like he's on the move.
26 votes. And if you get 26 votes, you elect the president. And that happened in the past. Thomas Jefferson was elected by the House of Representatives, not by the Electoral College.
How do you stop? I mean, how did they stop civil war at that point?
The Constitution doesn't provide for that. In fact, we had a civil war in 1860 because the Constitution didn't provide for that. I would hope good sense, common sense would prevail, and neither side would resort to arms. But I suspect that if you had that situation, there would be some violence. I have no doubt about that.
Alan, if you say to try to lower Biden from 306 to say 269, those electoral votes then don't. What would happen to those? If you're saying they're not affirmatively going to get Trump over 260 or 270, what happens to those electoral votes?
The Electoral College becomes irrelevant. The Constitution puts the Electoral College aside and says we now have it in the House of Representatives. So the Electoral College vote is a null and void.
Isn't that disgusting? This is all based on unsubstantiated claims that there is widespread voter fraud. Except as Trump continues to go to court cases, someone linked me an article, and maybe that's how we'll close it out. Someone linked me an article discussing how these folks are saying this isn't a case about voter fraud. Yeah, we'll go over this. It's a New York Times article. It's disgusting. This is not performative. This is very gross that the basis for what's happening right now is not on proof that there's a problem. It's on an idea that they can disenfranchise people in order to get their way. And there is a substantial portion of this population that is gung-ho about protecting America and protecting the votes that doesn't see this aspect of it, that doesn't see this nasty play by the Trump administration, by the Trump campaign, I guess we have to say. It's very bothersome.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so hang on just a second.
He's
But
getting
those
excited.
cases,
Like a bucket of
wouldn't
fried
they be
chicken.
decided? I mean, during Bush v. Gore, the Supreme Court made decisive moves that really sewed it up before the states had to send their electoral college.
Yep. Had they not done that, had the Supreme Court deferred its decision, the case might have gone, the matter might have gone to the House of Representatives because neither candidate would have gotten 270. And that's what happened in the 3 19th century elections that I referred to, actually 4, Jefferson as well, that no candidate. Remember, in those days, you'd have 4 or 5 candidates running. In 1824, you had Henry Clay, you had somebody else.
Yeah, so he's
I think
talking about like the votes were much easier to split.
there were 5 candidates, and they divided the electoral vote. Jackson got the most votes, but he didn't get half. According to the Constitution, you need a clear majority. If you don't get a clear majority, it goes to the House.
So one more on this. So if the courts, it behooves, if you want this, and I think this would be really a powder keg that I wouldn't want to see lit.
No doubt.
But if you wanted this to happen, it would behoove you then
Don't want to see the powder keg lit, but we're gonna keep stacking up that powder.
to file late or to keep the courts somehow or another tied up. Is that right? Because after the 13th of December, are you saying that then it just automatically triggers?
You don't have to file late. Remember, the wholesale suits can be decided on legal principles without a trial. But if you claim there were 10,000 invalid ballots, or if you follow what Sidney Powell said yesterday on Fox News, and you challenge the computer, saying the computers turned many votes that were supposed to be for Trump to Biden, that's the argument.
The argument with no substantiated evidence.
If you make that argument, you have to prove it. that's an evidentiary argument, and that requires a trial. And if the court set down for trial all the challenged ballots in 4 or 5 states, you might accomplish that purpose because you couldn't have a trial and a result probably between now and mid-December. So you don't have to delay. All you have to do is ask for a trial. And under the 7th Amendment to the Constitution, you have a right to trial by jury in any cases that were tried by jury at common law. So it becomes very complicated. Look, if I were teaching at Harvard now again, I stopped teaching 5 years ago, I retired, I would be teaching an entire seminar on this election. It raises so many intriguing constitutional questions. I'm not advocating any particular result. I'm just giving you my constitutional analysis.
The odds you think this might happen?
Very low. You'd need a perfect storm. You'd need enough states where there were enough challenges to make the difference.
Trump's doing as many rain dances as he can to make that storm happen.
States, some of which are Republican, would refuse to certify
Agreed. They are a pipe dream.
So that the electors could be chosen. It would require a perfect storm of both judicial, electoral, and political considerations to come together. And the odds are very low. But it's the only possible road that President Trump has to victory, and it's a very unlikely one. Which leads me to believe that he should. I'm not suggesting he secede or concede. I'm not suggesting that he stop his challenges, but I am strongly suggesting that he allow cooperation with the transition team, because the likely outcome is going to be President Biden on January 20th.
Let's see what Glenn Beck has to say about that.
And if that is likely, there's no good reason why the transition can't go forward while the challenges are still being made and no concession is offered.
The media says that, once they call an election, they call an election. But they don't call it. Yeah, they don't call the election.
They interpret the results. They fucking interpret the results. They don't call the election. No one in their right fucking mind is saying that the media calls the election. They are simply the ones who receive the info on election night and project to the American people who will be the next president of the United States. And with the margins that we saw, it is completely, utterly, 100% all fucking good that they came out and said, dog, listen, check this out. Donald Trump, not going to be the president. It's going to be Joe Biden. The end. Period. That's it. That's the end of the story. That's where it stops. That's where the media's role stops. They just say, we project Donald Trump is, Joe Biden is President of the United States. Then certification happens. This is how it has been for so fucking long. And somehow, Glenn Beck has forgotten that. I bet you in 2000, when George W. Bush won the election, that night when it was called, I guarantee you that he said George Bush has won the election. I guarantee you. I guarantee you.
Election. This is just
Biden is not officially the president-elect until and unless enough states certify the election result or the other candidate concedes. You don't get a president-elect through CNN or through Fox.
Right.
No shit, Dersh.
NBC.
But why don't you correct Glenn?
President, you call it what you want, but it's immediate term. Legally, the president-elect is picked only when those two circumstances are met. That is, sufficient states
don't give credit to his
or the other side
disingenuous
concedes.
question.
Neither of those things has happened yet.
And when you look at what the media is also saying about this is unheard of, that we don't do things like this in America. We've asked for recounts and we have challenged elections, not necessarily in the modern era or the late modern era, as much as we did in the first 150 years, right?
That's right. But we have also Bush versus Gore was a direct challenge. Look, I don't condemn the lawyers for doing this. I got an email the other day asking me to sign a petition to disbar the lawyers who are raising these issues. Just nonsense. people wanted to disbar me because I defended President Trump on the floor of the United States Senate. You don't disbar lawyers for doing their job. I don't condemn the lawyers who are raising these arguments.
I wonder if there is a legitimate case to disbar a lawyer. Now, I'm not saying I want this. I am curious, though, that if a lawyer acts in bad faith and presents a case that causes harm to a community, let's take it down to a local level, right? If that lawyer ruins, let's take it to an individual level. Let's say that a lawyer knowingly brings a case that they have no basis for, but that someone else, they want to bring it on the behalf of someone else who wants it. If they have an ethical, by the code of the bar, an ethical obligation to not bring forth the case, even if they know that chances are low that it's gonna lose, if they can see the effects the case is going to have, and if they go through with it, I am very curious. And I don't mean this in like, I'm just asking questions. No, I'm genuinely curious. Like, if there is some standard that lawyers are held to, that the effects that their suits have on individuals, if they engage in it knowing that it is fraudulent or wrong, and then it has a bad outcome, can they be held accountable for that? We'll have to get a lawyer on one day to talk about these things.
They lose, they may win. Even I've lost some cases. That's what happens. You don't always win your cases. You try your best to win. Look, every day I've been dealing with this complicated issue on my show, The Durst Show, and I've been getting these intriguing calls from people coming up with interesting ideas for how to deal with this from both sides of the aisle, from the Democratic side and the Republican side. And it's a fascinating issue. I think in the end, the victories that Trump receives will be Pyrrhic victories. He'll receive some victories, Pennsylvania, maybe other places, but they probably won't be enough to stop Vice President Biden from hitting the magic 270.
Well, you have it from the mouth of babes. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. Let's go over this article real quick. Like, you heard, like, let's reiterate that. You heard him. It's likely not going to happen. And I think that no one arguing for what Trump, on behalf of what Trump is doing, which Dersh wasn't, but for people arguing on behalf of what Trump is doing, they don't have the sight on the harm it's causing because of their position, because they want Trump to win. New York Times, this is not a fraud case. Keep an eye on what President Trump's lawyers say about supposed voter fraud in court, where lying under oath is a crime. Everyone wants to talk about under oath, affidavits. Plenty of those being shown to be not what you think. Hi, welcome to On Politics, your guide to the day in national politics. I'm Lisa Lehrer, your host. Sign up here to get your politics and blah, 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 blah. Stop the steal. 15 days after President Trump lost the election, there is no indication that any significant voter fraud took place. That hasn't stopped the president and his supporters from making all kinds of claims to the contrary. Over the past 2 weeks, there's been a whole lot of shouting, a deluge of legal filings, and plenty of denial from Mr. Trump and his allies. What there hasn't been? Any real evidence that the election was unfairly decided. The clearest tell that Mr. Trump's effort is a security blanket and a prayer strategy is the difference between what Mr. Trump's supporters say in the press and what they say in court, where lying under oath is a felony. On November 7th, the day most media outlets called the race for Joe Biden, Rudy Giuliani stood outside a landscaping business in Philadelphia making false claims about widespread election malfeasance. This is a gross miscarriage of the process that would assure that these ballots are not fraudulent, he said. It is fraud, an absolute fraud. Under questioning from a federal judge in Pennsylvania on Tuesday, Mr. Giuliani made a different admission. This is not a fraud case, he said. Since Election Day, the Trump campaign and its allies have filed more than 30 lawsuits that seek to stop the certification of results or have ballots thrown out. None have gotten any real legal traction, as lawyers back away from suggestions that the election was stolen, admit under oath that there's no sign of fraud, and have their evidence dismissed as unreliable. One minor win in Pennsylvania set aside a relatively small number of ballots that hadn't been counted yet, an inconsequential victory since Mr. Biden had already won the state without them. Law firms that originally agreed to represent the Trump campaign and the Republican Party have withdrawn from the litigation. The lead counsel, who has taken over in a Pennsylvania case, Mark Scaringi, said before he took the job that Mr. Trump's legal effort will not reverse this election. Even if Mr. Trump's complaints had some merit, which, again, they do not, they would be unlikely to change the outcome of the election. A losing candidate facing a close margin, maybe several hundred votes, could hope for some luck in a recount. That is not the situation faced by Mr. Trump, who would need to reverse the outcome in at least 3 swing states to reach 270 electoral votes. Even in this fanciful chain of events, he would need to overcome a deficit of at least 45,000 votes across 3 closest states. Of course, reality isn't stopping Mr. Trump, whose Twitter feed is so packed with fantastical claims that it's starting to look like a carton of cigarettes, plastered with warnings from the social media company that his statements are disputed. Even so, from state houses to the halls of Congress, most Republicans have refused to acknowledge Mr. Biden as the next president, fearing Mr. Trump could stir up a backlash from the party's base. Spewing disinformation into the public domain clearly influences how a sizable portion of Americans view current events. Look at the debate, quote fingers, over mask wearing, a scientifically proven way to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. Yet, just as virus deniers cannot not wish away a pandemic, all the political machinations of Mr. Trump and his supporters cannot change the outcome of the election. Mr. Biden will be the next president. But how divided the country remains when he takes office will have a lot to do with Mr. Trump. This is something we continue to talk about, to warn about. A sizable minority of Americans believe Mr. Trump's claims. A new poll released on Wednesday by Monmouth University found that 44% of Americans think we do not have enough information about the vote count to know who won the election. Nearly 1/3 believe Mr. Biden won only because of voter fraud. That's fucking insane. That is absolutely insane. Again, we talk about why are we having this discussion the way we are. 44% of Americans think we do not have enough information about the vote count to know who won the election. That is nuts. Almost half the country is believing that the election was not done properly, and we don't know enough to say who the winner is. What the fuck? In Michigan on Tuesday, 2 Republican members of the Wayne County Canvassing Board initially refused to certify the county's election results, a move that could have disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of voters, including every voter in Detroit, before backing down after an outcry from local voters and officials. Remember that one of their concessions was that they would be happy to certify every other fucking county except, or they would be willing to certify Wayne County except for the votes in Detroit. Their effort was cheered on by a top legal advisor to the Trump campaign. That's the end of the article. It is very frustrating to have to continue to have this discussion. Granted, it's only us, our small group of friends sitting in this chat, coming to the YouTube videos and having this discussion. But it's upsetting, it's infuriating, and it's repetitive because how many times do we have to say again and again, how many times do we have to show again and again that these claims are bullshit? This article points out a really good point. The fact that these people went in court are not calling it a case of fraud. Then what's there to contest? Then what are you trying to stop if there's no fraud? Are you leaning on the idea that there was a problem with the voting system? Because that's still yet to be unsubstantiated. And when Giuliani comes to that Four Seasons landscaping company and he says there is voter fraud, here's the hotline, call us and tell us where it was. This seems to have been a plan from the beginning, that they would go out and they would contest the election, regardless of the results. I wonder if Biden had won the vote he won the popular vote by 3 million votes, maybe more. It might have gone up, I think 4 million votes. It might have gone up higher. I wonder what the number would have had to have been for Trump to just sit back. I don't know. I don't know what it would have been because to this degree, the states that have been, like you did your recounts, right? Did we do a Michigan recount? I can't remember. I know we did one in Georgia, and it turned out to be nothing. We know the history of recounts. We've talked about it 1,000 fucking times. At the end of the day, the election was fair, and we're going to continue to deal with the fallout of this bullshit. Quentin asks in chat, is having a discussion. Let's see. My issue was as soon as Trump won in 2016, people were quick to call rigged on Twitter, and it was never really censored. They spent years investigating to find nothing substantial. Yet as soon as Trump loses in 2020, we are to assume no intervention, no fraud, and anyone mentioning this is censored online. That's my point. Here's the problem, Quentin. In 2016, three things happened. A bunch of things happened. First, Donald Trump was so incensed that he lost the popular vote that he claimed, wrongfully, that it must have been millions of illegal votes. So the Trump administration led to that. The Trump claim led to the Republican Congress kicking off a study. The study that found that within 40 years of elections, there has been no consequential voter fraud found. Handful of instances across all those years, period, end of story, right? So that claim was debunked by the conservatives, by the Republican Congress, and yet they jumped to this conclusion now. Okay, let's continue on with the other points. They rightfully, the left and anyone who was paying attention, rightfully pointed to the fact that Russia did interfere in our elections. They hacked voting systems. This is proven by the Intelligence Committee reports on it. They ran a very sophisticated disinformation and propaganda campaign. They hacked the DNC and released things in a very strategic manner. That alone was huge, and it was a reason that people should be upset. Whether or not it had the full effect is unknowable by many experts. Some experts think, yeah, because there is a rhyme between the reasons that Hillary Clinton lost and the reasons that, or and the information that was spread by the propaganda campaigns. But even then, Hillary Clinton the next day stepped back and said, I concede, I lost the election. Period, end of story. It was let go. Now, were there still people upset that Russia interfered? Yes, and they should have been. Did they hijack our election? Yes, that doesn't mean they crashed the plane, but they definitely boarded it, and they definitely took a few hostesses hostage. Or flight attendants, sorry. A hostess was weird to call a flight attendant that. So then I see a follow-up. It could be there was no fraud in 2020, but why is it being actively shut down? Let the Republicans investigate. This is why. Because he didn't just step back and say, I want voter fraud investigated again. He is sowing dissent by implying that our elections were fraudulent, that our elections were not legitimate, and that there was widespread voter fraud, and that votes were counted when they shouldn't have been. That's the problem. It's the messaging, and it's how he's handling it. Now, if he wants to leave, I still would say he's stupid after conceding for saying there was widespread voter fraud again. We need to look into this. I lost the election. Like, if he was doing that, I would still be saying the same, even if he had conceded, even if he was allowing Joe Biden to be in the transition. But he's holding up that transition, and he now has half the country thinking we don't have enough information. Here's the other thing. The reason it's dumb to ask the question, I'm not calling you dumb, I'm saying dumb in the sphere of people who continue to propagate this idea. One, people listen to those big names. Two, the idea that when there are global and domestic eyes on the election, to the extent that we see in 2020, especially after in 2016 it was found there is no widespread voter fraud of any consequence ever in the last 40 years, the idea that we get to 2020 and suddenly it is so rampant that Pennsylvania, which Joe Biden won by like 137,000 votes, that it was so rampant that we would go from a handful of instances over 40 years to tens or hundreds of thousands across the country is absurd, and it's baseless. That is why it's bad. When Rudy Giuliani comes out and says, there was fraud, but we don't have the proof, we need you to find the proof. When these affidavits are being turned over again and again, some of them which are walked back, when you have groups like Project Veritas just spewing unsubstantiated garbage, into the mouths of people who want Trump to win, and they're just eating it up without questioning the taste. That's the problem. And it's having a detrimental impact that we, unless some really great moment of clarity happens in the next month or so, it's something we're going to have to deal with for a long time. So that's why that it's a problem that people are asking these questions, because it should have never been a substantial question to begin with, and now it is. Yeah, let them investigate, but concede the election, continue with some normalcy. But Trump has gone out of his way to upend normal conventions within this country for a long time, and it's a problem. It's bad. It's not good, and it's hurting us as Americans. Like that's the thing. We have this democracy that works. We're doing our experiment in democracy, and it's fucking awesome. And I'm excited year after year. This was my first time voting. I've been eligible to vote since 2005. I have voted once, and that was this election. Why? Because I was in the military, and I was usually only eligible for absentee ballots, and I didn't get to register in time in 2016 because I had moved and I didn't have my license and all that shit. So I just said, fuck it. Now I wouldn't have had an impact, but I'm a little ashamed that I haven't voted after all these years. Where was I going with that? Voting's important. And I completely lost my train of thought. Fuck. I had somewhere I was going with that. Yes, sir. Pensive. Damn it. I wanted to end on a high note, and I completely lost where I was going with that. The point is that if they wanted to come in and question the votes, that's fine. But I want the normalcy, and I don't want the misinformation and disinformation. It's been spread. It's been harmful. We need to root it out, and we need to remove the influence it has on the people in our country, because it's unfair to them. You know, one of the problems is that not every American can be as politically minded as a lot of us are, those who hang around the Twitch politisphere and all that stuff. So when we look at the situation, we need leaders that aren't going to take advantage of our institutions in the malicious way that Donald Trump is. And that's really bothersome. I've been wanting, we talked about this yesterday. I've been wanting to call that certain family member today. It's been like, I've reached for my phone since like 7, just thinking like, I know they're awake. I see them active on Facebook, and I kind of want to, you know, want to talk to them and see if if they've come to this conclusion. But I don't want to have that fight. Anyway. Do your own research. As always, I'll say this. Do your own research. When you see something, look at the source. At the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, you can trust what a bit of news from a CNN reporter, a New York Times reporter, the Washington Post, LA Times, Wall Street Journal's pretty good. Like, these are sources that you can't look at them and just say, I don't agree with it because it says this. Here's a really good thing I realized, is that it's not that those publications don't put spin at all on anything. What I find is that if you go watch a Fox News article or a Glenn Beck piece or a Steven Crowder piece or a Tim Pool tweet, and you see whatever they're tweeting and whatever they're propagating, you have that, right? If you go look at the same story somewhere else, like the New York Times, you're not finding that little piece of that blurb they say wasn't there more often than not. You're finding that there's more context to it, that they take that little piece that sounds inflammatory or propagates the narrative they want, promotes the narrative they want, but then you find there's a modifier that changes it, or there's additional information that changes it. And that's what you find. So when you're looking at your favorite source, whether it's Fox News or CNN even, go just cross-reference it with something that's a little more neutral. And usually your mainstream newspapers, some withstanding, will help you with that. All right, go ahead and ask an off-topic question, Jay Miles. And then we'll be wrapping it up in a second. Oh, wait, hold on. Maybe I think I have time for a real quick meme, since Steven Crowder is going to be so generous to us.
I don't see the.
I'm not going to make you watch the advertisements. Oh, man, a press conference in 12 minutes? We might have to go over that this afternoon. I might do a second stream today. Let's see what Steven Crowder has to say. Boop-a-doop-a-doo.
It's time. This is something I stumbled across. Please, everyone share this right now at this second. This is what might get this stream banned. We're about to get into it, specifically, exclusive. No one else has done this yet. It's time to continue. Fraud Week. Okay, so you can go to Crowder Bits and see the catalog. We did Dominion, we did Georgia, we did Nevada and Pennsylvania, and we wanted to end on Michigan, and that's because Mr. Dave Landau and myself are Michiganders.
That's right.
And you currently live in Detroit, right?
Yeah, well, I live in New
Grosse
York and Detroit, yes.
Don't you live in Grosse Point, though?
That's right.
I love
where
when you just
grew up.
dox Dave.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
We published his address in the show notes, so.
I'm sure it's out there. I grew up in the Wayne County area.
The good thing is he doesn't need security. He just surrounds his one house with a bunch of bombed-out crack houses. So they act as a natural force field.
And pit bulls that aren't mine.
So Wayne County, for people who don't know, Wayne County is Detroit, and Wayne County encompasses many other, I guess county, but municipalities, cities that are in that county. It's a pretty big county, and people have been talking about Michigan, considering that Michigan was won, I believe, by a margin of 100. I was going through the voting records because I know Michigan, and I didn't even have time to get to Kent County and the deeply red counties in the western side of the state, as many people know, because some margins there don't make a whole lot of sense. Unfortunately, not all of that data is available. But I'm working with, from the official Wayne County Election Commission website, right here, these numbers. And I asked everyone last night, I asked you last night, Hat Vision Bill, I said, are you noticing anything? When I say the document was like 100 and something pages, and I didn't realize that I'm the only one, me and Reg, who read like 150-page documents.
I mean, I regularly read millions of pages for cases, but the
No,
point
I'm not
was,
belittling you.
No. Did you read more pages than Steven? Very upset that it's not 97.
Report from Wayne County. So I have this, I'm mirroring my screen. Forgive me if this is a little bit raw because I have to zoom in and I'm using an iPad. But look, let's start with this. You see the city of Detroit, right? City of Detroit, the precinct. So what do we have here? Keep in mind you have registered voters at the top there. Here, I'll show you registered voters at the top. Then you have cards cast, voters cast, and percent of turnout. So percent of turnout is based on registered voters. Right. That's important. Very. Knowing registered voters and the percentage of turnout. That's how you estimate it. So we look in these Detroit precincts, and these are pretty small, like 752. Here you have over 1,000. Here you have 801. Some of these only have 69. But if you look at the turnout rate, it's very low. Right, you have 15% there, maybe 14% here, 14% here, 15%, 12%. You have some that are as low as 10%. The highest I've seen here is 20%. So this is all Detroit precincts. Okay, I want to follow along here. 16%, 24%, 17%, 25%, 17%. Here, let's keep scrolling because it goes on for Detroit precincts for a while. 14%, 13%, 13%, 21% is pretty high there. 16%, 14%, 12%. Okay, these numbers are pretty consistent across the board. 11%. Where if you look at all these Detroit precincts, the voter turnout is between 10 and 20%. There are a few that are a little bit higher, but it's between 10 and 20% the voter turnout. Right. Based on registered voters in these Detroit precincts. Okay, so that's pretty low. And you notice here, by the way, the AV, meaning we're talking about the absentee ballots, that some of these weren't counted. So these are the in-day election turnouts, just to be clear. Right. I want to be clear about this because now I'm going to go through the surrounding, not counties, but municipalities in Detroit. Because we know Detroit would be where it's most liberal. Wayne County, a lot of people don't realize Wayne County encompasses a lot of places, like Grosse Point, like Livonia, Canton, some very suburban, working class, sometimes upper white middle class. You have areas outside of Detroit that are 95
white garbage.
Quickly here, I will search in, for example, Grosse Point. Okay, because now we'll move down the document. Sorry, Grosse. Oh wow. We still have registered voters, as you see there, and we have the turnout rate. And we have total turnout rate 84%, 84%, 82, 82, 82, 75 is the lowest we see there. 83, even if you look at the in-day voting percentage, they're all between 25, most of them between 25 and 30%. Some of them are absentee ballots, but you see a higher voting percentage by quite a significant margin, right? 80% here, 73. Now look, let me do this. I'm going to continue scrolling through here, because these are all part of Wayne County, and then something's going to surprise you, because we thought we were done with Detroit, right?
Right.
All right, let's go down to Livonia. Very well.
I think he's going to make some dumb fuck math problem that he's not qualified to make. He's not really making a point yet. Like, he's talking about percentage of turnout, but I can assume that's the direction he's heading in. So we're gonna add this video. Fuck it, we're gonna add this video to another bit of Crowder debunking we need to go over. God, he's annoying.
Right. Livonia, we have 79%, an average between 10 and 20%. Gross Point, I can bring up Canton. Again, this is all available at louderwithcrowder.com. We will make these sources available to you. You see a voter turnout rate of 80, 85%, 75%, which should tell you that that is an absolute blowout for Donald Trump because these are hard Trump areas.
Well, and Livonia's So White was trending not long ago.
Yes, it was. Livonia's So White.
Everybody's property.
That's where I think they poured some Clorox on Jussie Smollett's personal trainer.
They did.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
If the only piece of data that you have is this, and you're a campaign manager for Donald Trump, you're popping champagne.
Right, you're popping champagne. And by the way, these are big. These are much bigger than the Detroit precincts, right? You saw some of 60 people or 700 people, the highest precincts in the thousands. But these have many thousands of registered voters and a high percentage of voter turnout. So Melvindale, I would imagine, is white. I don't know. Northfield, very white, 83%, 84%. You can keep on going down here. Plymouth is very white. They have a great haunted house, Erebus, 85%. So these numbers are consistent.
No, that's Pontiac.
Oh, that's Pontiac. That's right. Either way, Plymouth is not exactly mixed. Now, I say this because this is also important. Donald Trump did more, right, with minority voters, and might have 15% would have come out for Donald Trump because that happened in every other 80-something% voter turnout in much bigger municipalities, all in Wayne County. But this is what was weird. So I did this, and then all of a sudden, Van Buren, I'm pretty sure that's a Caucasian area. Okay,
that's pretty much a garbage dump.
Is it really a garbage dump?
Actual garbage, like a slope is what a slope is what
No, that's land.
Defund the police. Quite hilarious because they Lululemon.
Okay, so just to be clear, so we are right now at this point we are left with Detroit. 15% turnout rate average.
Yeah.
And then all the surrounding areas that are hard Trump country, many thousands of registered voters that we see there, 80% average turning up to vote. And we know that that's obviously heavily Trump. But then we get to the bottom here, and all of a sudden Detroit comes back. But do you notice something? 0 registered voters, NA, as far as percent of vote turnout. 0 registered voters. And by the way, these are much bigger than the precincts before. 2,500 votes, 1,900 votes, 2,100 votes. Some of these are up to like 3,000 votes, 3,400 votes, 3,300 votes, 2,100 votes, 2,300 votes, 2,900 votes, with 0 registered voters and the percent of voter turnout. This, by the way, these numbers here that have 0 registered voters, no data whatsoever that you could match against, let's say if you were doing some kind of canvassing, if you were doing some kind of actual recount, there'd be no way to actually check because there are 0 registered voters in the books. This totals up to around 173,000 voters. Again, look, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And I know some people are going to say, well, that's the AVCB, which is the absentee voters counting ballot. What's the committee? I forgot what the... Let me bring this up.
Counting.
So we've made 2 calls to county boards and to people. Assume for a second that all these votes came in really quickly, like drinking from a fire hose. Well, it doesn't matter. You still have long before election registered voters. That's how they do the likely voters. So that doesn't change the fact that that data shouldn't read 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And this totals 173,000.
Okay, let's see. Michigan, anonymous voters. Okay, we need to figure out what the fuck he's talking about. I think, but he's implying that basically 173,000 people voted. But when he's showing that, I'm not seeing a percent counted for votes on those numbers. What's that category again? Cards cast. Okay, so it's saying registered votes. Excuse me. 1 second. Fucking spam. Anyway, so registered voters, cards cast, voters cast, voters should be votes.
And a voter turnout. This, by the way, these.
I'm not really understanding his claim, like where the ghost votes came. Like, I see that the percent turnout and the registered votes are 0, but the idea of 173,000 votes being anonymous, untraceable, and the fact that this hasn't blown the fuck up and that Steven Crowder was the one to really suss it out, I am confidently staking my non-existent reputation on the fact that he is out of his fucking mind, and that he has not uncovered anything. So we'll keep an eye on this one, and we'll revisit it. I have to cut stream for a minute. I have to go and get on a conference call and do that business. But Donald Trump's going to be speaking, so we're going to go ahead and probably within an hour or so, we'll come back and we'll do our thing. So you guys take it easy. Enjoy your lunch. I am going to murder this cat who will not get off of me. I mean, in a video game. And you guys enjoy your lunch. I don't know, you can't make those cat jokes here. And then, yeah, we'll be back. I'm sorry. I'm a little flustered because Taco is being super needy right now. And oh, God. And I'm distracted. Okay. All right. Anyway, you guys enjoy your lunch. I'm going to get on my meeting, and we'll go over the Trump, and we'll go over these Steven Crowder memes. Hey, if you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at LikeandGTV. If anything you've seen, you have additional sources on. If you have anything you want debunked, tweet me at LikeandGTV, and we'll go over it this afternoon along with the Trump press conference, which I'm sure is going to be incredibly sane and well-reasoned and full of new facts and insight into this incredibly democratic and successful election. You guys have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.